Good morning, and welcome to another Seed of the Day. Trust you guys are waking up feeling refreshed and ready to begin a new day. Today is the 24th of June, a Tuesday, and we get this opportunity to spend this moment together. So I trust you guys are ready to begin a new day. The guys in our neighborhood are putting together, I think it's a mosquito shield. So they go around really early in the morning. Nobody wants to complain because nobody wants to deal with all of the mosquitoes. But I'm glad you guys are waking up. I hope you're feeling great about this coming week. Today's going to be a scorcher. They said close to 100. So we'll see what that looks like for us. But we are in the last week of our study. It's all about the glorious return of Jesus. And we've been looking at Revelation chapter 21, verses 1 through 7. And um, and so I'd like to take us there and just finish up a little bit on this chapter, and then we'll look at some others in your study this week, and draw some comparisons with the Old Testament and New Testament as we bring our study to a close. So why don't you turn with me to the book of Revelation, and here we'll begin um, with part of our study. We just to bring some you know some clarity here, right? In the beginning, let me just read the first couple of verses here for us. All right, it says, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. There was no longer any sea. All of the creation that God had put in place has now is undergoing a transformation. It um, it's it's going to be new, new heavens, new earth, um, and everything that was associated with the sea. As you read through the book of Revelation, very often you'll see the sea associated with the beasts of that sea, which was a symbol for evil. Well, there is going to be no more evil, no more of the signs of man's rebellion in the sea any longer. It goes on and tells us that I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And we saw this new Jerusalem coming down out of heaven from God. So this way, it's a new way for us to think about this, because we're not going to heaven. It appears that heaven will be coming to us. This new Jerusalem, while it is a place where God will dwell with his people, it's so there it is this place, but it's also referred to as the bride beautifully prepared for her husband. So it speaks of the people themselves being a part, that comprise this city. So it's kind of like when you think about church, and you can talk about church as a building, but you could talk about church as being the living stones, right? The people themselves. So you could be in a park and say the church is gathered, right? Or you could refer, as I said, to the building. Here, the New Jerusalem is supposed to be conceived this way. It is the people of God, but it's also the dwelling in which God will live. Um, and so, what is this really saying to us? But this is saying that the future is going to be a return to glory. It's going to be where all of this started, and so we are waiting for that day. There is this groaning, as it were, within us, waiting for this day to finally come. And Romans chapter 8 is a good place where we read that. We want to take off this earthly tent, right, and be clothed with this heavenly dwelling that's been made by the hand of God. I don't know about you, but I can't wait for this new body, this new heaven, this new earth. I dream of the day when our mortality will be swallowed up by life. Um, every time I have to do a funeral, every time I have to pray for someone who's sick, a child who's undergoing an operation, I just can't wait for this day when all this stuff is behind us. But John said that this is what he saw. Now look at verse 3. It says, this is what he heard. So what did he hear? He said he heard a loud trumpet from the throne of God saying, now the dwelling of God is with men, and he will live with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. This dwelling of God is God. Another word could be used there is tabernacled. God is tabernacling with his people. Now, you might remember Old Testament, right? The Old Testament tabernacle that had all of God's presence and his glory. And once again, now God in his presence and glory is going to be with men. And the only other time we really get a sense of this is when Jesus, the Word of God, who was in the beginning, was with God, was God. This Word becomes flesh, dwells among us. See, there's that word again, that dwelling, that tabernacling of God with us. And so we've seen his glory, the glory of the one and only who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. And so this tabernacling of God with us is so that his presence pervades the entire assembly. And what is he going to do? What is this going to be like? But look what it says in verse 24. It says he's going to wipe every tear from your eyes. No more death, mourning, crying, pain. The old order of things has passed away. We're going to experience the passing of former realities. No more tears, no more pain, no more death. Think about everything that these words conjure up in your mind. All those heartaches, right? All the stress, all the fear. That no longer is going to be a part of our experience in this place that the Bible speaks of as heaven. The future is going to hold not only a restoring of glory, right? Because we lost that with sin. When sin entered into the world, paradise was lost. And what did we see? That the nature of man began to manifest itself in ways that were so rebellious against God, bringing so much pain and sorrow to fellow humanity. I mean, we see that in these past couple of weeks, don't we? The wars that are present, the posturing of pride and hubris, it's all around us. And we try to rise above that fray, but come on, this nature of man, it dies hard. But there is this coming day when he says he's going to wipe every tear from our eyes. There's going to be no more death, no more mourning, crying, pain. The old order of things has passed away. And in its place is this new reality. And it's going to be a very different world. We can only imagine. Verse 5 of Revelation 21 says, he who was seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. And then he said, write this down, for the words are trustworthy and true. The time of recreation has arrived. He says the truthfulness of his teaching will be witnessed by all. See, these words are trustworthy and true. So he wanted us, he's telling John, listen, I want you to write this down because this is going to be posterity for everyone. I want them all to understand what is going on here. And so in verse 6, he says to me, John writes, he said to me, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To him who is thirsty, I will give to drink without cost from the spring of the water of life. Isn't that what Jesus said to his disciples? If they come, he says, come to me, the fountain of living water. And so here, the Spirit of God is now in us, this living water that enables us or empowers us to live this life that God has called us to. And ultimately, it's going to come to a place where we will see him as he is. This recreation will have arrived. The truthfulness of what God had been teaching is now seen in its full glory, because God is about to finish what he started. And he does it as the sovereign over all of history. And he will quench our thirst for life. This, my friends, is the hope of heaven. So, what does the future hold? It holds a restoring of glory. It's going to introduce a different reality that we have never truly experienced. It's going to be the hope of heaven now fulfilled. On Sunday, I had used a quote from a woman named Johnny Erickson Tata. Many of you know her, right? A young woman at the age of 17 who became a quadriplegic because of a diving accident. She is now in her mid 70s, and God has preserved her and given her a platform to speak words of hope to countless around the world. She began foundations that help the infirm, that provide wheelchairs for those in impoverished countries, giving them more mobility and an opportunity to live out their life with a semblance of dignity. This coming from a woman who 24/7 needs people around her. She can't wipe her brow. She can't feed herself. She can't, obviously she's not walking, right? No use of her legs or her arms. And yet, man, what a powerful witness for Jesus. I just sit there and marvel sometimes at how God could do that. And she becomes an inspiration for so many. But she gave a talk called Heaven, Our Real Home. And it was a little dark when I read it, and I thought, I love the truthfulness of what she says, but it is a little startling. But in the context of what we're talking about, I thought it really fit, and so I want to read it to you today. It says, "Why is heaven so near for those of us who suffer loss? When we can't conceive a child, or lose the use of our arms or our legs or a loved one, the ability to think clearly. Why is heaven the home of our hearts? For one thing," she adds, "I am convinced that our hardships and our headaches and our heartaches make us want to go there. Broken homes, broken bodies, broken hearts serve to crush the illusions that earth can ever really satisfy, that earth can ever really keep its promises. Only the hope of heaven can truly move our passions off this planet, which God knows full well isn't going to satisfy us anyway. Only the hope of heaven can place our focus where one day we will find the glorious fulfillment of all that our heart longs for, a place of belonging." Now, so far, you realize, like, she's looking at this world, and instead of looking at this world as, trying to make it heaven, she recognizes that this world is never going to be heaven, that it is always going to be lacking, never really able to fulfill us, never able to quench that thirst for life, a life where there's no pain, sorrow. We can try to manipulate our circumstances to avoid all kinds of pain, but it doesn't work. This world is, at its core, demonstrates its brokenness. And it's sometimes very, very difficult to take, isn't it? when she writes, only the hope of heaven can truly move our passions off this planet, which God knows full well isn't going to satisfy us anyway. No, she says, only the hope of heaven can place our focus where one day we will find the glorious fulfillment of all that our heart longs for. And then she gets very real, I think. She adds, when it finally hits you that the hopes you cherished will never come true, when it finally hits you that your loved one is gone from this life forever, that your child's disability will never change, that you'll never be as pretty or as popular or as successful as you once hoped you might be, then your sights are lifted. A broken heart leads to true contentment. We ask less of this life because we know full well that more is coming in the next. Think about every commercial that comes on television, just about, promising to remove your pain, to give you this life and vitality. And yet, you ever notice that with all these drugs that are promising so many things, there's always this little addendum that's on the bottom saying, but, this may not work for you, and this may cause complications. And if you find severe symptoms, you need to go and visit your doctor. Because, see, this is not a cure. This is not a remedy that's going to fix everybody's problem and you're going to live happily ever after. You can enjoy health for a long season, and then, come on, age catches up to all of us. I did a bunch of yard work yesterday, anticipating, I didn't have any time this weekend. We had a funeral and a couple other things I had to do. But so I took care of that yesterday. Man, I was out there for about 6-7 hours. And I came in, it was definitely, a 2 ibuprofen a night. But I took out my foam roller, kind of got on that for a little bit, feel pretty good this morning. But yeah, there would have been a time I would have been doing, that nonstop. But yeah, we're getting older. But Johnny's main point here is that you ask less of this life because you know full well that more is coming in the next. This anticipation of heaven in its fulfillment, the overturning of what we experience as fractured and broken. This is what we're waiting for. This is what we're anticipating for. This is what keeps us from losing hope. It's just that you can't misplace our vision in this world, because this world will never bring it. That's why when I read this, I thought, man, that's pretty dark. We always like to live your life like, well, it's going to get better. You could do whatever you want. The future is up to you. But come on, we realize that that's not always true, is it? That there are sometimes you're going to come up against circumstances, and even if you are successful in the short run, in the long run, come on, who doesn't fall prey to the greatest enemy of our souls, and that is death, right? So thinking about this heaven where there's no more tears, crying, death, pain, yeah, I don't know about you, but I can't wait. So when he says in verse 7, he who overcomes will inherit all this, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. You see, this is God saying, no, we're going to be brought back. The family is going to be reunited, and all of the strain, all of the hardships will be gone. So all that stands in the way of our enjoyment of this new reality is really the course our lives take in this life. And that's why we want to make sure that we're walking with Jesus, that we have looked to him for forgiveness, for strength, for grace, that we haven't sought to forge our own way, refusing his counsel, but instead we're content to live our lives, with the knowledge of God. It's like it says in Proverbs 3, Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not upon your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. See, in the end, your decision to follow Jesus is what's going to provide entrance into this new kingdom. So, you see why we need to fix our eyes on him and run with endurance the race that's marked out for us? That we can't take our hands off the plow, that we have to be diligent. I came across a poem, or like a little story, and it talks about heaven and sometimes how hard it is for some people to really envision it. And I thought it was a unique way of thinking about this glory to come, this different reality, this hope of heaven. And so I'd like to share it with you this morning. It says it's a story of two babies in their mother's womb. One turns to the other and says, "Do you believe in life after delivery?" that's a funny question, right? Especially since we've already been there, done that, right? But it says, "Do you believe in life after delivery?" And the other one says, "Of course. There has to be something after delivery. Maybe we're here to prepare ourselves for what will be later." And he replies, he says, "That's nonsense. There's no delight. There's no life after delivery. After all, like, what kind of life would that be?" He says, "I don't know, but there'll be more light than here. Maybe we'll walk with our legs, eat with our mouths. Maybe, just maybe, we'll have other senses we can't understand now." That's ridiculous. Walking is impossible, and eating with our mouth? That's absurd. Listen, the umbilical cord is what is supplying us with nutrition and all that we need. But come on, it's far too short to be walking around, whatever that means. Life after delivery is just logically excluded. So the other baby says, "But what if that's just different than it is here? Maybe we don't need that physical cord anymore." And he responds, "Okay, if it were like that, then tell me why no one has ever come back from there. Delivery is the end of life. In the after delivery, there is nothing but darkness and silence and oblivion. It takes us nowhere." But the other one responds, "But certainly we'll meet Mother, and she'll take care of us." And the first goes, "Mother? You actually believe in Mother? If Mother exists, where is she now?" He said, "Well, she's all around us. We are of her. It is in her that we live. Without her, this world could not exist." "Well, I don't see her," he says. "It's only logical that she's not here." To which the second replied, "Sometimes when you're in silence and you really listen, you can perceive her presence. You can hear her loving voice calling down from above." A silly little story, right? But now, having experienced life after delivery, you would have had no idea in your mother's womb what this creation would even look like. You had no idea how you would make your way. You had no idea of this life cycle that you would be introduced to, the marvel of vision, the splendor that comes with hearing. taste, touch, like all of our senses make us feel like we're so alive. And yet, the world in which we're born into is broken. And our senses make us mindful of that. And so, no matter how we see the world, we all recognize that there is something still not quite right. We try really hard to make it our best, but it seems sometimes that it just works against us. I think of you know people who are on the short end of injustice. They didn't wake up that day thinking, "Oh, I think this will be a great day for people to turn on me." No, but when it happens, it's devastating. And so this life after delivery, how about if heaven is like that? We're over here arguing about something that is rendered certain. Something that Jesus says, if it were not so, I would have told you. But I go to prepare a place for you, that where I am, there you may be also. I don't leave you as orphans. I'm going to send my Spirit, the Holy Spirit, that will give you everything that you need for life and godliness. He will guide you into all truth. He will bring this inner conviction. And if you really listen, you'll perceive his presence. I'm going to give you my word so that you can reflect on the things that I have said and taught. Because one day, surely as goodness and mercy has followed you all the days of this life, the day is coming when you will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Isn't that a great thought? And maybe it'll be just like this conversation about life after delivery. Only the Bible is telling us about life after death. There is something that waits us, that Jesus demonstrated through his resurrection from the dead. And those who have eyes to see and ears to hear understand the glory that will be restored, a reality that we dream about, and the hope of heaven. My friends, thanks so much for joining me this morning. I trust these words are encouraging to you. And Lord willing, I look forward to spending a little bit more time again tomorrow. So thank you for joining me on this Tuesday, June 24th. And Lord willing, we'll see each other again tomorrow. Make sure that you go out and seize the day, never forgetting that God is good all the time. God bless, my friends.